Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today's guest is Laurie Meadoff, and she is the founder and president of the City Kids Foundation. And this particular interview will be part of our Milken Global Conference 2025 series, where we're highlighting and featuring participants and attendees that were at the Milken Global Conference and supporters. So first off, Laurie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. Good to hear your voice.
All right, Laurie. So we got a lot to talk about today. So I definitely want to get into your work over with the City Kids Foundation. And also, I know you have some other things that you're doing in media and otherwise, and in Africa and really globally. So we'll get into that too. But just to get us kicked off here, Milken Global Conference, you were in the Beverly Hills Conference this year. Is this your first year? Have you been before? Or I'm just curious about your experience.
It's actually my first year at the big one. I was able to go to a few conferences during Climate Week in the past. And I was also a speaker and a facilitator at the Wellness Garden, which is kind of a side event at Milken. That was amazing because people were so blown away by so much conference. They had a moment of rest and of breathing with incredible experts from around the world. So
that's amazing.
That was really great.
I missed that garden. I don't know how or why, but I've had a couple people on. Somebody said something about a sound bath or something. I don't even know. I was busy working and everybody's over here playing. No, I'm just playing.
Well, it wasn't playing. I feel like it was digesting. They had a moment to digest. Yeah.
I'm like, this is messed up. And next year I know what to look out for. Now I have the inside track. So I love talking to a first-time participant in the act in the big conference. Like I'm sure through your career and your distinguished career, you've been to many, many conferences. What made this one stick out? Like as your first time, I like to call it to the big show, or for me, it's the Super Bowl of conferences every year. So what made it stick out to you?
Well, Super Bowl is right in the pure numbers that were there. I am addicted to learning, and I love learning anything that is in health, media, well-being, education, youth. Those are my sweet spots. And I go to the Lake Nona Festival every year, the Impact, and I've gone to Sages and Scientists, and I produced some for the Dalai Lama in my past and been at Brookings Institute, part of that, in cultural diplomacy. And so to me, Milken represented, you're right, the Super Bowl of all of this. It was very overwhelming because there were so many things to choose and to be part of. But I think the level of work is so astounding of what Milken is doing. And I just love what they're building with the American dream in Washington. And I hope I'm actually following up now to be part of that. I think
amazing.
What he's doing is phenomenal, what all of them are doing. I also was able to attend the Philanthropic Investors Forum a day before and just was so blown away by the CEOs discussing various issues within cutbacks in the world and what strategies and collaborations they were doing, which seemed to be, the name of the game is collaborate on all sorts of different topics with funders.
So speaking of philanthropy and collaboration, I understand the City Kids Foundation recently celebrated its 40 years anniversary.
I know, and I'm only 26 still. No.
Come on,
40.
Talk to me a little bit about this history and even the foundation. Let's get into this. I got to go to the beginning. What spurred this? You're the founder.
Yes, I had worked in prisons. I had graduated in educational theater with a master's degree at NYU. And I was always born to bring diverse young people together from all sorts of different backgrounds. And City Kids Success is safe space where young people turn their pain into purpose and then co-create any actions that move a community forward. And that model, I can't even tell you, 2 weeks ago, 40-year party with alumni that are now in their 50s and grown up. And it was, it was so palpable, the love in the room and the commitment. And almost 90% of them were doing work that had impact, right, and mission built into it. And that's really the essence of the kind of work that has survived. And I had left City Kids. I had gone around the world. I've been in Panama. I work in Africa and Japan, and still came back because the elements of safe space, and really, especially having a touch point now with young people as AI and digital take off, are now more needed now more than ever.
Yeah,
so the one other thing, in 1986, we did the largest, I don't know if you know the artist Keith Haring. Keith had passed away, but we did a 90-foot by 30-foot piece of artwork called City Kids Speak on Liberty. 1,000 kids painted on what liberty means to them. And I'm going back to Milken because the Dream Center would be an amazing place to place this tribute to liberty. And we use it around the world now to relight the torch. It was just in Japan, and to have young people engaged in, again, dialogue on topics that are important, and then co-create together.
I'm a big fan of Keith, by the way. I'm not fortunate enough to own an original anything, but I do have a couple of T-shirts.
I'll send you one. I'll send you he did our logo. We worked a lot with him over the years, and his legacy of artivism, like he was the original artist plus activist. And now, 40 years later, City Kids' dream is to build a global school of artivism. And I think that is so key to his legacy.
I love it. And like I mentioned, I'm a big fan of his, and that's great to hear. And I want something else that you mentioned to me and that stuck out is talking a little bit about your media career and things that you've done, traveling all around the world. So maybe let's spend some time on that as well. So what kind of projects or what are you working on nowadays?
Well, it's interesting because I left City Kids over those 40 years because I wanted to take the authenticity of what was going on the ground in the floor with 70, 80, 100 kids all the time and bring it to the world. And I got a Rockefeller Fellowship with Jacqueline Novogratz before Acumen Fund. And there I am in South Africa, and I see this project with a TV set in Soweto at night, and prior to Skype being built. And they were talking to kids in Philly. And I said, you could do this too. Wait, I could do this internationally. So I optioned the property and got funding by the woman who created Barney the Purple Dinosaur, Cheryl Leach. And we created 12 half-hour Chat the Planet, linking young people in South Africa to America, Australia, Jordan, and then Baghdad pre- and post-war. And we reached 380 million homes and then created a short series called Hometown Baghdad. But the one story that, again, talks about this work, we were in Amman and Jordan, and three cameras in two different locations with 20-somethings talking to each other. And the kid in Jordan said, my grandmother was killed by a soldier, and she was just trying to save a 5-year-old. And then one in America says, yo, man, my brother's in Kuwait, and every time the door opens, I think he's going to blow up. And there was this dead silence in the filmmaking part that I just said, humanity pulled up a chair and walked in the room. And that's what happens when we, in real time, sit together. Humanity comes in. And I've bared witness to this over and over again in all the work internationally. And we need that more than ever.
Now, there's this theme of you, just from us speaking, of bringing young people together in different mediums and different areas, whether it's with the City Kids, whether what you're doing in media, whether it's a project you just mentioned. What do you feel like that secret sauce is, or that common thread, or what brings young people together?
It's really the safety of being in a kind of creating a surrogate family for the time. When you have kids share their pain and feel safe enough to talk about anything in a non-judgment environment. And that had to do with media. I mean, I've 3 times Emmy nominated. I've done, international work, and that brought me to Brookings Institute on Cultural Diplomacy. But my layer on top of that is the arts. I think that it's interesting. There's a quote about an artivist from Ashanti, and they said, the artivist uses artistic talents to fight and struggle against injustice by any medium possible. The artivist merges freedom, justice with the pen, the lens, the voice. But here's a line that changed me. It was, the artivist knows that to make an observation is to have an obligation. And that's the spark that young people, when they talk about things and they feel like, wow, that doesn't feel fair, that's not right. A young person at City Kids read an article where a black young person got painted white in a park. And we're sitting on the floor, and Malik Yoba, who is my vice president, now turned, major philanthropist and artist and television star. But Malik said, well, what you going to do about hate? And it became a song. And someone else said, well, I want to heal the rainbow. And that became a song. And then that hit millions of people as we produced it and went out. So like the banner, like the hearing, a young person says, I put my name there, even though it's a little name. Someone's going to say, how'd you do that? So I grab young people and hopefully create that space that they could be part of movement building, that they're valued no matter what your background is, that they have an authentic voice that has to be heard. And I think that the future of artivism and partnerships, there's so many great practices going. If we could, codify them, put them in a place, and then teach and train, we have an army of positivity out in the streets.
And something that you mentioned just now kind of struck me is when you're talking about like the kids feeling or the youth feeling, safe and accepted and like they have a place. And I remember when I used to bring my mom on the podcast sometimes. So she was in a social work for, 40 plus years before she retired, all that good stuff. And she worked for the Covenant House in Michigan, and she was one of their second employee there actually. And she helped grow that organization in Michigan to what it is now. And she used to always talk about that. And she'd say like, meeting the youth where they're at, right? Not judging, like making them feel safe, and that you'd be surprised what can happen when you do that. And I remember one thing that if I was to paraphrase her words, she's like, because she worked with at-risk youth, like, so those that had in the United States that maybe have not the best deal, we'll say. And she'd be like, man, even just like, bringing in a McDonald's hamburger or like doing this and sitting down and pulling up a chair, like you'd be surprised what can happen and how you could change somebody's life, because it shouldn't be assumed that they've had that experience to connect, especially with an adult. Like maybe they don't have other adults in their life where they've ever been able to connect or have a conversation with it when they weren't being judged or attacked or talking about what they did wrong.
So your mom was a wise woman, I'll tell you that. And what I've learned is, I think that I always say pain's cross-cultural. Like we're all ex-children, and we all as ex-children have experienced powerlessness. And when that's a common denominator when you sit, and I don't care if you're, you define leadership as that kid who's going to Harvard with that leading everybody out the back door because of drugs. Once you get into a safe space and you share, something else happens. And so diversity is really one of the secret things that have worked so well with City Kids, because we're all high risk. And we all need that kind of connecting tissue, whether it's to family and friends. Plus, I'll never forget when Nancy Reagan once came to City Kids and she was just doing Just Saying No. And she said, what works? And one of the things the kid said is like, when my friend tells me to cut it out. Like I always call them gold nuggets. Like young people, they're so smart. And once you're listening deeply as an adult, you just get guided on how to move forward with them, supporting them, and encouraging that voice to be heard. And I've done it, I've seen it all my life. I mean, right now we have a project called Take Back the Mic Africa, and we're just building a big film studio there where the young people will be owning their own IP. And that's the big thing for me with the artivism movement. How do we create revenue packed in, built in to everything that we do, so that the young people get money, the organizations get money, and that there's a business that is really layered on. And that's what I love about, learning at Milken, because, they're always thinking in a 360 model. So amazing. That is stuff that I'm all over. I might have to die and come back to build again because I am hitting that age, but that could be arranged,
I love it. Well, Laurie, this has been so much fun having you on the show today. That being said, if somebody's listening to this or watching this and they want to learn more about the City Kids Foundation or follow any of your work, how do people connect? How do they follow up?
Well, I'm easy because I'm Laurie, Laurie, at citykids.com. Or you could go to the City Kids Foundation online, And right away, we are, of course, looking for donations. We're partnering with this Lower East Side Girls Club that have 40,000 square feet of phenomenal space, and we want to activate it with young people as we test the waters of artivism. And I just found a actual box of Keith Haring never seen before footage of the making of the banner while Herbie Hancock and Philip laughed. And so we're building that in a film, and we desperately need distribution for that film as well as funding. But I literally was able to film the kids, they're in their 50s now, the young ones who had filmed, who painted on the banner and worked with Keith. And at the reunion, they came back and 40 years later sat down and talked about that and how it impacted them. So, we're about collaboration. We need funding for all this work. But I guess 40 years later, I've gotten to know some stuff that works with kids by now. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing about your mom. I just think that's such a phenomenal story. So thank you.
Thank you. And to the audience, just so you know, we'll definitely put the links in the show notes so you can just click on them and head right on over and check out the City Kids Foundation and Laurie. Speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Laurie, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. Great to meet you.